All right, welcome everybody to the second webinar in the Jumpstarting Business Operations series. Today's topic is learning the positive lessons from disruption. It is the 30th of April, 2020. Hopefully you found yourself to the right spot. If not, go ahead and stick around for a while. I think you'll find this one interesting and of value. I'm Zane Clark, Senior Director of Education for SEMA. Before we get started today, a few housekeeping items. Restrooms are down the hallway to your left. Be sure and turn off your audio if indeed you are using the restroom. If it's not down the hallway to your left, you're probably at home and know where it's at. So I trust that you will find it. Other housekeeping items, audio. You may have joined with your computer audio. If you'd like to switch over to phone, just go in that audio tab in the control panel of your GoToWebinar platform, and you can make some adjustments there. Also, we will be accepting text questions throughout today's webinar, and you can access that and submit questions, whether they are technical in nature or to the presentation itself. And that's located in your control panel under the questions bar. Just go ahead and type your question in there, and we will get to it at the end of today's webinar. You will notice, maybe or maybe not, in the handout section, there are a PDF and a Word doc in there that you can access from today's presentation, which has a lot of valuable information in there that you can use well after today's webinar. At the end, and this is very exciting, compliments of Mike Brown and Brain Zooming Group, we will be giving away to one lucky participant on today's webinar a e-course called Strategic Planning Made Simple, a $549 value, and we will randomly call somebody out at the end of today's webinar and award that to them. All right, today's webinar is learning the positive lessons from disruptions. The first one we had in the series was making sure your messaging and tone are on target. If you missed that, that is available on the SEMA Education Facebook page. And you can also email us directly and we can get that over to you. All right, I'm proud to partner. We see the gentleman to my right or left, depending on how you're looking at it, Mike Brown. Say hey, Mike.
Hey, Zane, good to be with you again today.
Yeah. Hey, Mike is the founder and CEO of Brain Zooming Group. We've been a long-time partner with them, presenting the SEMA and PRI show. Mike is also, I would call, a prolific author. His latest book, Idea Magnets, helps dynamic leaders to cultivate extreme creativity and innovative success. With that introduction, I'll turn it over to the man of the hour, Mr. Brown, to walk us through today's webinar. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Zane. Actually, half hour, so don't anybody get freaked out about, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do with that other half hour? So appreciate the opportunity to be with you again. As Zane said, we're going to talk about how during this period that has been tremendously disruptive for everybody, you can look back and say, what are the positive lessons and how do we bring that forward into our business to improve performance as we go forward? As Zane said, Brain Zooming is a company, we're 10 years old, and a lot of what we do, it's interesting, is to help people in more typical times think about times like this, think about when there's disruption or different ways of looking at things, and all of a sudden right now has presented some real opportunities to look at those things. So the course he mentioned, this free e-course, is all about helping you develop your strategy and do it in very simple fashion. And you'll see those tools in there that are really all about, well, look at it differently or think about something that you might ever imagine. And all of a sudden, in the last 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, a lot of those things have happened. And that's why a crisis, as much as it's a challenge, can be a tremendously valuable learning opportunity, an opportunity to push for change, an opportunity to do new things, because you can't do things the same way you've always done. Hours change, availability of people to come into a retail location changes, maybe online presence goes way up, processes change, all these things that you can't do right now, or maybe you can do that you couldn't do before, they're things we call strategic detours. They cause you to think about your business, think about your customers, think about your marketplace in new ways. What that does, particularly if you've been, had quite a bit of tenure in your organization, is it gives you fresh eyes. And what we mean by that is you're seeing things that you've overlooked before, or you just don't notice. It almost takes you back to when you started and everything was new and you noticed a lot of things in the business, among your customers, how you interact. This is a great opportunity to really recapture those fresh eyes in a meaningful, impactful kind of way. If I can get the direction going here. So the key is, while you've got those fresh eyes, how do you get the lessons down? Because I dare say 4 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now, a lot of these new things will be, well, we've always done it like that, and you won't be able to see it. So that's what we're going to focus on today, is how do you capture that and turn it into things that you're going to be able to use on an ongoing basis. So the first step, and this came out of calls we were starting to get from clients about 3-4 weeks ago, where they had sort of gotten past survival mode and were saying, we've done a lot of change. How are we going to keep this going? And it really set the stage for this. The first thing we talked to them about is identify and celebrate all the wins that you've experienced over the last 2 months. And that can be through, just determination, or grit. You just sort of made your way through things. It could be where you took risks. It could be things you tried to learn. It could be real successes. The big thing we tried to emphasize with them is look for little wins. It doesn't have to be this huge new initiative, just anything that showed that we banded together as an organization and we stepped up in a new kind of way, whether it turned into a clear result right now or maybe will be a result later. And the reason those are so important is those wins become stories for your organization. Those are the things, and I've heard some clients already talking about the stories of, we did a pricing approach that we never would have thought about before. We redeployed technology in a way that we never, ever would have imagined. Those are the stories about innovation that you want to continue to tell. And no matter your business status, you've been going through those types of changes. So make sure that you take a first step of what has been the wins, big, small, any size, any type, that become the fabric, the stories of your organization as we go forward. I'm having a heck of a time with this mouse. There we go. The next piece, and some questions you want to start to look at, some things you want to examine, are the foundations of your business, the things that you always felt were important in terms of values and strategies, behaviors, processes, particularly financial arrangements, as all of us have felt that crimp on the financial side of things. And as you look at those things that you've thought before this were going to be important, you want to ask a couple of questions. Basically, what was important that had to change, and what was important that held up? It was still important throughout this time. That's an important pulse point, and really, as you look forward, to say, how do we recast, how do we reshape where we're going and the things that we can depend on? Another important question is, what new and surprising things emerged? Maybe there was something that you didn't even have on your radar screen, or maybe a team member who stepped up to be in a very new role. Maybe a partner, maybe a bank that stepped up and was able to help you through a process that you didn't have a lot of insight to. You want to make sure that you capture those as well, because those are people, those are processes, those are things that, again, as you go forward, you want to come back and look to and say, well, have I maybe overlooked that, or was it there all along and I just didn't notice the potential impact it could have? Another important set of questions, and these are all in this handout, so you've got them there and you can use these by yourself or with your team, but how did you handle disruption? As you think about going into this, were you able to anticipate, well, I'm hearing about coronavirus, I'm hearing about shutdowns in other countries, what's that mean for us? Or were you maybe a little bit more blindsided by that as it started to roll out across the US? And then once it became clear with stay at home and shelter in place, what did that look like and how were you able to handle that? That's two, where you want to look at people, processes, partners, resources, finances, all these sort of key aspects of running a business, and say, which of those held up really well? Where did we have the flexibility within the organization that we'd already put it in place that we could adapt? And are there places where those things cracked? And not just what cracked, but what cracked early on, and what held together for a little bit, but then it cracked later on. Again, that is a great opportunity to do a diagnostic of, yeah, we thought we were pretty set from maybe a financial perspective, or we were set with a team, or whatever partnership relationships, and were you as set as you thought you were, and what do you do with that going forward? So, question: as you go through and ask these questions and try and get answers to them, who do you invite to share perspectives? You may be in a one-person operation. Well, in that case, it's obviously a lot of it's going to fall on you, but I'd invite you to even think about who else might be involved. Maybe there's a customer, maybe there's other business people who had insight, maybe a spouse or a significant other that you were sort of sharing the frustrations or the challenges or those wins with throughout. It may be to involve them. If you've got a little bigger organization, 2, 3, 4 people or more, I would really recommend you invite as many people as possible to provide those perspectives. Don't make that just, well, we've got 3 managers and the managers are going to sit down and do that. Everybody on your team has got a perspective and can be valuable to see, what did they experience? What did they see going on? Are there gaps or are there opportunities maybe that they realized that folks beyond your manager group saw? So think broadly about this. Don't just keep it close to the vest. This is a great opportunity to turn to your team and depend on them. Then, as you've done this look back over the last few weeks to get ready to look forward, this question about what are you trying to achieve right now? That's a little bit of a question to say, we've had a strategy in place, but what does that start to look like going forward? Are the same things that we were trying to accomplish really important now? Or are there other priorities, other plans, other strategies we need to do because our organization doesn't look different, or it's not going to look the same when we open back up, and we've got to account for that. You want to do that from a business standpoint, and in that handout, I actually dropped in, I think it's 15 questions, to do that on a personal level. I had that out as a blog post a couple of weeks ago and got a lot of great response from people saying, I needed this right now to sort of see, how did I stand up through this? How did my family stand up through that? So I'm going to talk about the business side today, but look for that page in the handout as well, because it can be a good thing, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, to do that check on a personal level. So what are you trying to achieve right now? What's going to be important? So between these questions and thinking about what are our priorities, what do we need to do as we go forward with what our business looks like right now, that's really going to form the basis of the pieces of change a week from now and a month from now and the rest of the year. And it's not, I think I said this in the last webinar, this isn't a one and done kind of thing where, hey, we got through that, did the questions, we got a strategy, let's go forward. Things are fluid enough, even as states start to turn back on, things are going to change. We're all, as much as we were surprised and unprepared potentially for the last 8 weeks, it's going to be new and very different as we go forward. I keep telling my mother that. It's an interesting conversation. It seems like almost every day it's like, well, wow, things have changed. It's like, Mom, this has touched everybody. Nothing is going to be just exactly the same as it was before. Understanding, though, what's going to matter for your organization is so vital, because as you move forward and continue to flex, you're going to want to innovate. And we talk about innovation as improving on things that matter. So if you've done this look at what's happened, this look forward, you're going to have a really solid sense of the things that matter in your organization, for your customers, for your employees, for your suppliers, all parts of your business. That then sets you up to really start to look at and innovate as much as you can on as many things as you can. I was talking to a financial planner friend the other day. He was like, I'm a little nervous about making a change to something that I see as a really good opportunity, because I made a change with my clients a year and a half ago. And I was like, we're all ready for change. if it makes you better, prepares you better to serve your clients, now's the time to make those kind of changes and to look at innovation. And as I started out, I said one of the things that's interesting is a lot of the exercises and the tools that we have to help people do strategic thinking and think big ideas and big creative thoughts. They're all built around constraining some view of reality, or changing a perspective, so you have to look at something really differently, or providing a permission that typically you'd never get that permission to do something, or maybe exaggerate a boundary. And we do that in sort of an artificial setting because it helps people think about future opportunities, future challenges in new ways. And like I said, the thing that's interesting is if you look back at the situation that we're going through right now and we'll extend into the future, all of these things have happened. We're all facing new constraints in terms of ability to open and operate, and perspectives that we never had before. Maybe permissions even to close down a store early to be able to do cleaning that before we had to have extended hours, and now we can do something different. Boundaries of access to businesses, all these types of things have changed. So it's a great opportunity to say, well, as I look through these 4 areas, what has changed within our business and how we're interacting with our customers? Because you can look at those things and say, maybe we've been innovating already, and how we've taken advantage of these, or as we think about innovating on an ongoing basis, how do we make this work? How do we look at the business in such a fundamentally different way? If we had a full line of products, do we narrow down now to the products that really make the most sense? If we've mainly been brick and mortar and we're just easing into online a little bit, how do we accelerate that? Maybe you've thought that, my audience really isn't so much online. They want to come in and feel stuff and smell the smells and talk the talk. Maybe now, because they've been forced to get into online, that starts to look different. So a whole variety of things. And I think Zane talked about it last time. We try and make everything we do relatable, whether it's a solo one-person business all the way up to a big corporation. So I was going to share a quick case study that actually came out of Brainstorming. For us, we've been dealing with all of these issues. So we saw a lot of in-person engagements start to go away in March. And we've always done a pretty comprehensive process of really understanding what a client was trying to accomplish, and do a lot of research ahead of time, and then we'd get together and innovate, and then a report afterwards. And we saw people basically scrambling. They needed to get to stuff really quickly. And so we came up with this thing called Blast. It's like a new online offering, but I will tell you, that's the second name it's had in the last 4 weeks. We've been experimenting as we go along. It's taken a price point for what we do and shrunk it down to prices I never thought we would do before. And we'll basically, because it only happens in 30 minutes, we start in the middle of the process. And the folks who work with me would tell you, this is nothing that Mike would have ever gone to before. We've always used things online, but we've had to take advantage of those constraints and perspectives to really think about it in new ways. So I tell you that for no other reason than to say we're living through the same thing as well. And I think I mentioned last time, I'm helping out at a church that I belong to, where we started live streaming. And 8 weeks ago, we never, ever would have thought of doing that. So this is the right time. If you've been trying to do new things and innovate and be at the forefront, there's no better time to just accelerate that and do even more with it. And if you've been hesitant, because maybe, I've had the customers I've always had, they like to have things done a certain way, this is your time to take a hard look, and a look that's not sentimental at all, and say, you know what? Let's look at how we can innovate. Let's look at how we can improve. How can we take these lessons of the last X number of weeks and turn that into new business models, new opportunities, maybe new parts of your business that you never imagined. So from takeaways, and then we'll get into questions. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, Zane mentioned it, pop some questions out there. If there's some things you want to spend a little time with, you want to hear me talk about a little bit more or clarify, I'd love to use our remaining time together to make sure that we've tweaked the content to be as meaningful for you as possible. But end with these 4 takeaways. this idea of capturing and retelling your success stories is so important because, again, it's your opportunity in a real life setting to have a lot of stories about how you've done new things. And maybe 18 months from now, or a couple of years from now, or even a few weeks from now, when things get a little stale and people get a little bit resistant about change, you want to bring these stories back to talk about the impact you're able to have. Go out and get as many perspectives as you can. If that's inside your team, if that's inside your business, fantastic. If it's customers, if it's other people who've got some insight to what you've been going through and how things have changed, bring them in as well, because the more perspectives, the better off you're going to be for understanding where you are now and how you're going to be able to take that forward. Walk away from the things that didn't work and build on what did. And like I said, I was looking at an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day where they were talking about, don't be sentimental at this time. Take a cold, hard look, and it is a time to heavy up on what worked and cut off or slice off from your business maybe the things that didn't work for you in this time when you face the most pressure. And finally, with an opening to change, look at, explore, take advantage of everything you can to innovate everything in your business, because as much as we're weary of change potentially and we just want to get back to normal, I don't think we're going to find that normal the way that we left it at the end of February. It's going to be a different normal. We're talking not about what the new normal is, because I don't know that we even know what that is. We're talking about what's the new important. And if you can understand the new important in your business, that sets you up to innovate on those important things. So those are the takeaways. Those are some of the ways that we've been working with clients and talking about to sustain innovation, sustain the lessons that you've learned. And Zane, if we've got maybe some questions here in the last couple of minutes, we can tackle those, and then we'll do the giveaway here at the end for the Strategy for Success course.
Yeah, you got it. Listen, well done, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Something that you ended up there kind of hit me in a different way. We always talk about this new normal, but shifting our mindset from the new normal to the new important. I think if we look at things through those lens, it will really affect positively the way we do business. Yeah, we have some questions, and we will get to those in just a second. But real quick, I wanted to just take this platform to give a shout out to a few folks that I see on the call. When I first started in the automotive industry back in 1997, maybe 1998, I had the good fortune of working alongside a gentleman by the name of Dan Saganovich, and I see him on the call. So shout out to Dan. Glad you could join us. We have a longtime SEMA volunteer with the Professional Restylers Organization, Ray Ott, on the webinar with us today. And when I have more time, I'll share a story about myself and Ray and a dirt track in Lima, Ohio. It's a funny story. And also, lastly, we have one of our TORA leaders, the Truck and Off-Road Alliance, Mike Hallmark, with us today. So I always appreciate it when SEMA leaders join the call. Thank you so much. All right, let's get to some questions. The first one is coming from Matt, and this is his question for you, Mike. What would you recommend is the best way to approach mistakes with change? For example, when you renamed your new Blast segment, how did you approach the brand challenges when you modified the name so quickly?
Oh, I think one of the things that I got past was getting antsy about, oh my gosh, we put stuff out there and now we've changed it. We're trying to be very much in the, I think they call it in the tech world, the ship it quickly mode. So we had it out there as a name called StrataZoom, which we loved the name. We thought it had the strategy, it had part of Zooming, it was great. Well, then Zoom became the biggest online platform, and everybody we talked to was like, oh yeah, it's like Zoom, it's like another online thing, and that's not what it is. So in that case, our hands sort of got forced. It was like, nobody's going to understand it if we don't change the name. And I'll tell you, and I've got team members on the phone, it still took us 2 or 3 weeks to come up with another name. So we were out there talking about it, and we didn't really have a way to describe it. What we did was basically go back and change content. We updated names, and we're still in the process of doing it. Even that logo, that's just been worked on this week. So I think, again, people are, I talked in the last workshop about if you're getting into online and you're making some mistakes and the camera's not right, you sort of have a little bit more of a grace period right now. I think for change as well, a lot of your audience isn't so much focused on what you're doing. They're focused on their own survival and what they're trying to do in their business. So I think you can try things, see what they do, and make changes. And a lot of people aren't even going to notice by the time they turn their attention back to what's going on with you. So I think it's finding, what has to be perfect, what has to be right on, and what can you just get out there and learn and adapt as you go.
All right. Hey, we're going to take 2 more questions, and we're going to announce the winner of your e-course.
Cool.
Next question comes from Joe in Kokomo. And Joe asks, once we get past the crisis, how do I keep a fresh look at what we are changing and doing so I can still see the opportunities? I think it's that mindset of continuous innovation.
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, I think as things get back to whatever semblance of, okay, this feels like we've got a little bit more footing here. Some of the ways that we work with people to get those fresh eyes in more typical kind of circumstances is, maybe really get close to a process or something that goes on in your business, and spend 90 minutes, spend a half a day, and just really look at that and focus on that. At times it can be to move away from things. An interesting thing, particularly if you've got a retail presence, and we've done this, I did this, a lot of my stuff happens at this church volunteering I do. We did an experience audit where we started from the street and walked to the front of the church and then walked inside the church, and we were seeing what was the experience at each time. So that's an instance of stepping away and getting a different perspective to help get to fresh eyes. So if you've got a retail storefront, that might be an interesting thing to do, to say, well, I blow through here every day, but if I were coming in new and fresh, what would that start to look like? Maybe a third one is, in that ebook, I've got a link to an Idea Magnet's free ebook on 49 questions to come up with amazing ideas. You can go grab some of those ideas. You can download that thing for nothing and use those on an ongoing basis to think about how you lead your organization or how you look at new opportunities with fresh eyes after things become a little bit more familiar, even if they're new right now.
All right. One more question, and it comes from Hurley in Chino Hills. And it kind of gets to this essence of getting stuff out there ASAP versus spending the time to make sure you're getting it right. So is it better to be quick or right?
So there's a little bit of breakup, but I think it's about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's one. Yeah, so if it's about getting stuff out there, so I talked a little bit about that blast thing. I think the thing that's important is, at times people can try and get so much perfect, you sort of never release something or never get out there and do it. So something that we haven't talked so much about in the webinars, but will probably show up in one of the future ones, is get the right perfect. Is look at, do you need a perfect plan? Do you need a perfect experience? Do you need the perfect people? Do you need the perfect marketing? Figure out, because usually there's a lot fewer perfect things that you really need, and make sure you get just the 1 or 2 things perfect, and be okay with making mistakes or not being quite on target with the other pieces. And that can be helpful to sort of get over some of those internal or maybe not just personal, but internal in your organization hurdles to just trying as much new stuff as you can.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Take care.